All right, welcome everybody. This is Chris Olson from Driven to Engage, and I have a good friend of mine, Matt Tedesco, one of the smartest digital guys that I know in the business, with me today to talk about SEO and social media and how dealers can do maybe a more effective job around how they spend and what they create with that spend. So, Matt, welcome to the Driven to Engage podcast. I'm glad you're here.
Thanks. Happy to be here. Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. So we've had some conversations here previously, and just one of the things we like to talk about here is evolving that customer experience. And part of that is what we do in our marketing spend. And what I'd really like to dive into is maybe how dealers can be a little more creative with how they spend their marketing dollars.
Yeah, I think so. So for me, right, I love paid search. I love Facebook ads. I love all of that kind of stuff. But the one thing you have to keep in mind when it comes to marketing spend is as soon as you click on an ad, that dollar is gone forever, right? When you create content for SEO, it's around forever, right? So one of the things that happens to me all the time, and this probably happens to you, right? Let's say I'm on YouTube and I search for something. The video that I find is from 2018 or 2019, right? It wasn't produced yesterday, right? It could be for anything, right? We all do that type of stuff where we go to search for whatever it may be. The video wasn't created yesterday. It was created some time in the past, right? And that's really what SEO is about, right? If we created a page for, say, a 2019 whatever, right? 3 Series or, Prius, people are still searching for a 2019. They search for it in 2019. They search for it in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, right? And it goes on, right? It goes on for a long time. The average person, I believe I read today, is keeping a car for 7 years, right? So that's pretty far in the past that people are looking for cars, right?
So it's almost like you're building. It's almost like dollars in the bank that you're reinvesting, that with every passing month, you're broadening your reach. Am I understanding what you're saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because these are it's like self-reinforcing, right? So you create content for your website, somebody goes to it. The more people that go to it, the better it ranks. The better it ranks, the more people go to it. And it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy of doing better and better and better. You have to start with creating the content, obviously.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's one of the difficulty that dealers have with it, right? Is I think a lot of times they expect their website provider to do everything, right? It's kind of an industry norm.
Yeah.
But as soon as you've been around for a while, you know that that's really not going to happen, right? It's not going to happen at the pace you need it to do, and potentially at the quality. Although some of them are wonderful, so don't get me wrong. But I feel like once they pay the provider, it's now their problem, right? It's no longer my problem, right? When really the majority of the people that interact with us, that's where they're going, right? So from that standpoint, that needs to be the best thing that we do, right? What percentage of people go to your website and leave and never come back? A lot. I mean, it's probably different by brand, but it's probably 90%, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And why is that? For me, it's they don't find the information that they're looking for, right? When you go to Google, search for anything, how far do you go, right? Like how far down do you really go? I mean, Google's now made an infinite scroll, so you can go forever, but I guarantee you're not doing it 12 times, right?
Have I done 3 mouse pulls on my mouse as I scroll down? Like I don't
probably not, right? So I think we leave so much up for grabs. One of the things that I personally try to focus on a lot is used cars and CPO, right? So back when I was working with BMW, one of the pages I helped a dealer build was for a CPO X5. It was one of the most trafficked pages on our website. But the thing that really stuck out to the dealer was we outranked Auto Trader, Car Gurus, and Cars.com, right? So there is an enormous opportunity that website providers not going to do. They don't build individual landing pages for individual cars, right? They might have some research pages, but that's only for a new car, right? It's not for certified pre-owned. We have individual pages for new cars, and we have CPO and used, all lumped in together, right? But we all know those make a ton more money for dealers, right, than selling new cars, right? We have to sell new cars. I get it. But if you ask a dealer just dollar for dollar, what would you rather sell? Probably a used car. So there's a ton. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's funny because with a client, I was looking at that the other day and just putting in their name and going incognito on the search, putting their name and as a Google search, and all those third-party companies you talk about that you just mentioned popped up where they should have ranked themselves, right? So is that almost a test the dealer could do? How would they clear their cookies or whatever so that if they did a search, it removes all that?
Yeah, so you could go incognito for one. You could use Google Ad Preview to just, which is completely kind of independent of any cookies and that kind of stuff. I think as an industry, we tend to get too wrapped up in the here and now, right? And you see it from a sales perspective, right? It's this guy is in front of me, and this is the deal that I got on my desk, and that's who I'm focused on. From a marketing perspective, that's my job's done. If you have somebody in front of you, that's all I'm supposed to do. So I don't worry about that person, right? I used to joke around with my dealers and say, "You're going to sell your store?" And I kind of laugh, right? Like, no. Like, so how are you going to get somebody in 3 years? Like, don't worry about it in 3 years. I want to worry about it now.
Yeah.
Because you want to grow your business, and something like SEO specifically, it's not overnight. It takes time, right? You have got to keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it better and doing it better and doing more of it. But we got to start now to worry about the person 3 years from now, right? So unless you're really planning on selling your store, like, let's get ahead of where everybody else is. Because I think if you talk to the average dealer, they're maybe looking out just the calendar year, never worried about the following year or the year after that.
I'm glad you brought that up because literally one of my clients is going through that right now, right? They're a GM dealer. They just had their pinnacle conversation middle of the month. The quarter ends in 3 weeks, basically, and 2.5. And now it's all hands on deck. What can we do? So it's like everybody that is there to do the work of selling the cars now is scrambling around. Well, how can we hit that number so we attain all that money? When what we should have strategically, what should have been done was, if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, is let your managers be the managers. Let your BDC manage the opportunity to manage the prospects to create the opportunities in the store. But marketing's got to be thinking at a minimum 3 months down the track then, right?
Absolutely. So the easiest way to think about this, I'm a runner. So you don't train for a marathon 2 weeks before the event, right? You're going to get hurt, right? You have to think about it. The average training plan is like 12 weeks. Some go as far out as 20, right? So you've got to work up to the event of, we got 2 weeks left and we need to sell cars.
Yeah.
Right. Usain Bolt has a wonderful quote with this regard. He said, "I trained 4 years to run 9 seconds."
Yeah.
Right. And that's the truth, right? He started a really long time ago to be successful in this moment. And that's really what SEO is about, right? You got to start, and it builds upon itself, right? I have kids, you have kids, and I keep telling them, we got to do the basics first, right? You've just got to start, do the basics really well, and then you can move on. SEO is the basics of your website.
Wow. Yeah, that's great.
It is so overlooked.
Yep.
And one of, like we were talking about, one of the reasons it's so overlooked because it's inexpensive, right? I think as an industry whole,
Yeah.
right, maybe the most you can spend with a provider is like $2,500 a month. Like that's the top of the line. So the value that you perceive from 2,500 versus 25,000 for paid search, there's a huge gap there in
No.
what you believe is happening, right?
Well, it's funny because I remember selling cars in the early 90s, and my GM, I was walking by, and I was a green pea at that point. I walked by the GM's office, and he's like, "Hey, Chris, come here, come here, come here." And he's like showing me his newspaper ad and how he, lined up the cars in certain orders on the page, right? And it was like just that fix that we got to have about spending that money. And I think in a lot of ways in automotive, we've gotten so used to spending absorbent amounts of money on a monthly basis because we've been told that's what we should be doing. But what I hear you saying is really what we ought to be investing in as a priority is all the things that aren't going to pay off in the moment, but are going to pay off down the track.
Yeah, funny. I sold Yellow Pages.
Did you?
So yeah, yeah, full color, double truck. Let's do it. $2,000 a month. And back then too.
That's great.
But that's that was the time, obviously. But the hard thing about the SEO is you don't see an immediate value, right? Like these things may take months, could be years, right? And we live in a here and now type of structure, right? We're worried about the deal, the month, maybe the quarter, but that's really it. We're not so focused on that, right? And obviously with paid search or paid social, right? It's kind of like instant gratification, right? I spend $25,000, I see 20,000 visits, and that's exciting, right? It's a dopamine hit, really. It's what it is, right? Spend more, get more, spend more, get more, right? And that's the value proposition, right? Where it's true, right? But you can also get to the point where if you just keep spending that $2,500 a month, it's just creating huge downstream benefits for you that you're not really recognizing in the moment, right? Like dealers obviously go through their reporting and they look at all of the metrics. I don't see a lot of them getting really excited about SEO because then, at the end of the day, it's boring, right? It's just creating content and stuff. But that's the world we live in, right? How many people start their journey for anything on Google or even now search for something on TikTok, right?
Right. Yeah.
We all do it. So there's somehow there's a disconnect of like not understanding that, your money is limited when it comes to paid search, right? Like you have an impression share. You may show up 40% of the time, right? So you've got to spend a lot more money to show up a lot more often, right? That's not the case with SEO, right? You can just keep showing up in perpetuity,
right?
Right? You just spent the money down here, and now it essentially lasts forever.
Yeah. I mean, what I hear you saying is it's more bang for the buck, and it's like
way more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Way more.
Yeah. It's funny, man, because I probably sound like half an idiot because I don't understand the technical aspects of these pieces. And the experience that I've had has been around paid search, page search, page search. It's your digital billboard. It's, what drove me nuts is that somehow as an operator, how do I convert an impression to a car deal? Like at the end of the day, what I want to pay for is something tangible that I can hold on to. But if I can spend way more, get the same results, and be able to actually have more visibility to where my dollars are going, I think it's funny that more people aren't talking about it. But I think you're right. I think it's because the money from everybody that has an influence on a general manager or marketing director, they're coming to you because the dollars are in that digital marketing spend that isn't SEO. So now one of the other things we talked about was being different, right? Like at the end of the day, it's like this one client that I've got is I'm out there looking at all of his competition. As I go to everyone's site, everybody's site looks the same, and they're not differentiating themselves. Their Toyota Camry is the same as the Toyota Camry down the street. But what are we doing to really differentiate ourselves? What are some areas there that you're working with your clients on?
So it's funny you say that, right? So we live today in a short form video society. Everything is a short form video. I think one of the reasons that dealers struggled in the past with YouTube and now are very much struggling with content on TikTok is because they don't really know what their brand is, right? The dealership doesn't really have a "this is me," right? Their why buy of anything other than, locally owned and operated, or we're fast or whatever. But those things are all well and good, but every dealership will tell you it's their people that make them different. We don't showcase people. We showcase cars, right? It is why TikTok is so powerful. It's just normal people. You're just connecting with normal people who are telling you normal things, or maybe educating you about something, often nothing special about them other than they know some stuff. We know a lot about cars.
Why would I want to invest in my people when they leave all the time?
Yeah. So great question, right? I would say one thing for the dealer, own your own channels. Don't let your sales rep own the channel or have access to it, right? It's inevitable, right? It's every job, right? So it's okay if that person creates content and leaves, right? And that's what I'd say, the dealer needs to have the access to it, maybe his, GM or something. But, we can grant other people access, but we need to immediately take them away, right? If they do leave.
You know what? That kind of came out of nowhere, right? I hadn't expected to talk about that, but that piece, if you're an operator, whether you're a dealer principal or a general manager, and you want to hold yourself accountable, that immediately the first thing that you said was, we don't promote our people. The first thing I thought was the response back is going to be, well, why do I want to build them up? They're just going to leave anyway. Probably how most operators think about that. Why is that? Like, it's so true, because one, if you polled all your salespeople in your dealership to give me our dealership's value proposition, what's our why buy? You're going to get as many different versions of that as people you ask, right? And I think a lot of times dealers are not clear on their own vision, because we've gotten into this loop of turnover. The culture of the store changes based on who shows up from one day to the next, and we're not purposeful about how we go to market. But you look at the stores who perpetually perform, and I'm thinking like Brian Benstock and Paragon. Like, that dude, has he been in the store? Does he need to be in the store? He doesn't need to be in the store, because he's set that vision for the team that allows him to go out and be a front man for that Honda and Acura brand and the Brian Benstock brand. And he's invested that time in his value proposition, that they always are at the top of the board month after month. They produce, and he doesn't have to micromanage what happens in his store every day. So if you were to think about, how do I want to run my store? How do I want to run as a general manager? How do I want to run my store? What do I want to get out of this? Do I want to have to micromanage my people day to day? Or do I just want to set the standards and make sure that everybody understands what those standards are? And I think if we did that, then yes, absolutely, go invest in your people. Have a sit down, almost a Big Brother version of those one-on-ones that they do with the camera, where they just ask some questions. Why are you here? Tell us about how you grew up, so that people get to meet them. It's funny. Now I'm talking too much, And I'll say this, and I'd love to get your take on this, but one of the things that I talk about is that when a lead gets submitted into a dealership, now we can talk about just how out of step form submissions are in 2023 going into 2024. But the fact of the matter is those forms hit CRMs all day, every day. And at the end of the day, that person who's given their name, phone number, email address, the car they want, maybe their trade, depending on where it came from, their home address, so I can actually Google what their house looks like. They give all this information to us. They're not shopping at this point. They're interviewing. And so why not give yourself the best opportunity? Why don't you as the dealer go interview your salespeople and let the customer choose who they want to buy the car from? So I don't know, it's something that as you bring that up, I think that's different. Who's doing that? I haven't seen it on any websites that I've gone to.
No. So to your first point, like, why would I do this? They're going to leave. My response would be, do you train them on your CRM? Why would you do that? They're going to leave. Right?
Yeah.
You don't look at it that way, right? Like, CRM training is essential. They have to know how to use that, right? Why is that different than anything else they're going to do?
Yeah.
Right? Do they not have to take exams for the manufacturer to know about the cars? Why bother do that?
Yeah. Well, I dare say
the manufacturer's going to stop.
But knowing how dealerships work, not everybody uses the CRM the same way. And there's probably one person in that dealership, maybe two, who's made a little side cash being the one to take those tests for everybody else, you know?
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
To your point, we do invest in them.
Yeah, but the expectation from the dealer when he purchases that is that everyone's going to use it. Like, reality is that that's not going to happen. We know that, right? But that's the expectation. That's what they would like to happen, is everybody logging everything, right? Make everybody's life easier. The same should be for everything else, right? That is an expectation of the dealership, right? You can't be good over here, crappy over here, great over here, right? If you want to perform well, you got to be great in all aspects.
Yeah.
Right. Second point, if I'll just ask you a question, does Brian have a brand? Ben Suck, does he have a brand?
100%.
Do you think of him as a brand? I don't think anybody would disagree that Brian is a brand.
Absolutely.
Right. So he has curated that over, a long period of time.
I know what in my mind, I know what his signature looks like. I've seen it. Right?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I equate that to, like, go way back in time to, the 50s, right? I would bet the vast majority of the dealers then, the owner, everybody knew him because he walked around the store all the time. He was at the Little League. He asked questions. He was there all the time, and he was a brand. He was part of the community. Everybody knew him, right? And he was omnipresent, right? We don't see that nearly as much today. And that's okay because it's part of the world we live in. But those people had a brand. Like, it was their store, and that's who they are. And we've got a lot of conglomerates these days and huge dealer groups. That's a little harder to do that, right? But the other reality that you were talking about with them leaving and just coming to my mind is that sales managers leave, F&I leaves, BDC leaves, GMs leave. But, like, it can't be the expectation of they're going to leave, because at some point, dealers sell, they're going to leave, right? So it's just the reality of it today. I don't think the stores know. Like, I don't think most stores have any idea why they are who they are or how to showcase themselves, right? And I think we tend to overcomplicate it, right? We need some type of, like, singular message of why buy from me, right? Whether it's I've been part of the community, or, we're cheaper than everybody else, we're faster than everybody else, right? Whatever it may be. But the reality for me is, your people all have personalities, right? You just need to showcase your people. One of the most viral videos I saw from a dealer on TikTok was they just went around to everybody in the store and asked them what their first car was. the range of people from the 1986 Camaro, the T-Bird, and then, the dealer's son who had a brand new BMW. Right? It's like, but it ran the gamut, right?
Yeah.
It was just pure. It's pure, right? We can all relate to that. And I think that relatability, right, it goes into the sales process, right? Like asking a lot of questions and just getting to know people and not pressuring them and finding them the right car and just being a person.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of that's the missing link when it comes to video content.
That's an interesting, man. I want to build a business model around that, because I think when I left Subaru Pacific, they had done something similar to that, where they had some company had come in and then they set up like cameras and they did this whole, and I don't think you even need to do that nowadays. I mean, shit with Zoom. I got 2 clients that I've only been into one time in the last 2 years, we do everything on Zoom. So a lot of this could just be done in that way with a green screen and a webcam.
You don't even need that. The iPhone or the Galaxy or whatever is so powerful now. I mean, TikTok has green screens and all this stuff, and you can do it in almost any platform, right? It just needs to happen, right? I think we often look of it as too much of a time investment, right? Because if we go back to the Green Pea time, right? Like we had the agency come in, it was Tuesday, we're going to shoot our commercial for the month, we're going to take the next 4 hours, right? And it's a huge production, and you never missed it. Couldn't miss it.
Right.
Right? Never a time where you're going to miss your commercials in 1999. Like you'd feel like the world was going to explode, right? So back to the value, right? With SEO versus paid search, now you already have the phone in your pocket. It actually doesn't cost you anything, like literally nothing.
Yeah.
And that's where we miss the value, right? A lot of dealers would rather pay an agency $5,000, $7,000 to come in and shoot commercials for them that they can put on YouTube, when they don't need to do that.
No.
We like those things are great sometimes, right? Don't get me wrong, but it's just the constant repetition of normal people talking about cars. Right, that's who we relate to. Or we all like the cars, but we relate to the people. It's the people that you buy from people, right? There's a lot of car options now, and a lot of great ones, right? Technology has escalated so dramatically that from this brand to this brand, technology in the car is not all that different. It's really not.
Well, it's so true. And as you're talking about this, I'm even thinking, when we go to our dealer website, and I've gone to a dozen of my clients' competitors' websites, they all look the same. One of them actually has a logo, but that's the only thing that looks different. The rest of it is the same, right? None of them has the GM greeting the customer on the website to say, "Hey, I'm me, and welcome to our dealership," right? And even something like that is different. And then. And you mentioned something there a second ago, and I think in automotive, it's a big thing that we just don't take time. We don't take time. Like if you go into if your dealership's culture changes, depending on who's working the desk from one day to the next, that's a problem. Like the dealership's culture should be defined by the leadership team, and there should be something that you're constantly doing your work. I think about this a lot because I've been doing a lot of work with performance culture coaching and working with people to really get clear on what they're there for. Like, how do people see us now? How do we see ourselves now? And in an ideal world, how do we want to be seen? Like, how many people will come up with that same list? And taking the time to just do that exercise can go so far in helping you identify what should our value proposition actually be. Because this, in an ideal world, is how we want to be thought of. But yet, when we look at Google and our Yelp reviews, it says something totally different, right? How do we get those two things to mirror one another? And it really comes down to being time and being conscious about how you want to go to market.
Dealers create the culture. Go back to the 50s, the dealer created the culture. They should be creating the culture now, right? I know you'll see this every now and then. You'll go to a store and there'll be one guy or girl who makes all of their own videos, who sells tons of cars, right? And has their own personal brand.
Yeah.
That helps that one person, but not the dealership as a whole, right? Yes, that person is selling more cars, but if everybody was doing that, how many more cars would we sell?
Right.
Right. The dealership website, how often do you go to, a research page or a new inventory and see an actual YouTube video, not the car spinning, right? An actual video of somebody talking about the car. I couldn't tell you when I have, to be honest. Why?
That's great.
Here's a really technical thing, right? Google is changing their search algorithm a lot these days, right? We've seen Bard. You can ask an AI to answer your questions, but what they're also doing is called multimodal. And multimodal is they bring in search results, they bring in paid search results, they bring in videos. I'm sure you've seen it, like video in the middle of the search results, right? There may be an image in the middle, right? So they're pulling in information from every single thing. So if you don't have a video, they're obviously not pulling it in. They're pulling in cars.com or Edmunds, right? That's who they're pulling in. Right? Maybe something from YouTube from somebody else, but these things are all overlaying into one thing now, right? And so we have to look at it holistically from that point of view. Like we need to be in all of those places because somebody else will.
Well, I might challenge you here as we're getting to, the end here. If you were to give them 3 to 5 bullet points to maybe analyze or implement to improve that customer experience and to be truly different in their market, what are some things that you would highlight that we can finish off with here?
So to show for all of those things, there's an easy way to do that. Ask your salespeople, what questions do they get asked the most? That's your content.
Yeah.
Because if they're getting those conversations with customers, that's what people are searching for, right? It doesn't have to be some type of complex analysis. There's a lot you can do from a complex analysis standpoint, but start by just keeping it simple.
Yeah.
Right. With that in mind, respond to people with a personalized video. I know it takes more time, but how often do you get a personalized video from a sales rep? You submit a lead on a car. You can take a minute. Hi, Mrs. Jones. This is the car you asked about. Here's 3 features about the exterior, 3 features about the interior. Let me know when you would like to schedule time tomorrow to come in. Like don't overthink it. Don't make it complex.
Right.
Generally they're asking specific questions. Just answer them. Answer them in a video. Like how many emails do you get personally a day from companies you bought stuff from that you completely ignore?
Right.
Tons. So if you want to be different, be different. Respond in a different way.
Yeah.
From the dealership website that you were talking about, get rid of 90% of the stuff because you don't get, right? You can go in and analyze it with your website provider, your agency or whoever. There are so many websites that have 10 call to actions, right? That's overwhelming to people. Like is scheduling an appointment different than scheduling a test drive? If I'm looking at the car, why do I need to check availability of it? Like there it is in front of me. Right. We're not in the inventory crunch like we were. Like it made sense at a specific time, not so much anymore. Right. Especially if you have the actual pictures of the car, right? The expectation from the customer is that if I'm looking at the car's available. Otherwise it wouldn't be on the website. Right. Like I think we'll eventually get to the point where it's just call, email, or text, maybe chat, right? Instant things. Like those 4 things are really it.
Yeah.
And like we've got digital retailing tools and, CDPs and all of those things happening. But the less options you give to people, I think the more likely they are to take action, right? If you go to a website, can't find anything because I've got to click through 40 things, you're like, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to somewhere else that'll answer my questions. And at the end of the day, that's what the website should be about, is answering questions, right? Because that's why we come to it. Like, do you have the color, right? Do you have the year? Does it have the right features? Is it the right trim? Is there something I'm missing that I don't know about the car? Can I look at it? Can I do a video of the car? Right? You got a lot of questions. Like, that's what the needs assessment is about, is answering questions, right? So just answer the questions.
It's funny you say, as you're saying that, I'm just thinking, like, why not include snail mail to that, right? Like, what's your address, and we'll send you something in the mail. Like, I feel like email communication is, I imagine if you gave them those three options, email, or four maybe, call us, text us,
Yep.
chat with us, or email us. Email would be the last choice of how they would want to engage.
It would be for me, without a doubt.
Let me see.
Right?
I have a question, but I'd like it to be answered in the slowest way possible.
Yeah. Tomorrow.
Right. When you get a chance,
Yeah. Yeah. The world is moving really fast, right? Like, if you don't use it, you've heard of ChatGPT, right? If you don't use it, you've probably heard of Bard, right? We are moving to the point where we're going to have an AI on the website that's going to do every one of those things. It will text you, it will chat with you, it will answer all of your questions, it will do all of these things and do it probably more efficiently, to be honest, right? Yeah. So as we move to a more technologically advanced world, we'll need a lot less of this stuff, right? Like, I could go to a page like Google, right? Just like Google, we can think of our websites now like Google. It just has a search bar. Like, what is the lease offer on a 2023 Prius? Takes you to that page. Like, here's the link. There's no reason that we can't start moving that way for dealer websites too, right? It's so much cleaner. Like, look at the cars. Like, I didn't personally like the inside of my car looking like an F1, right? A Formula One car. Now they're so clean, right? It's a screen.
Right.
There's all the buttons are gone, right? The cars are doing it. We can do it with our digital experience now too. It's so much easier.
Yeah, man, I think especially now, right? There's so many things happening. The COVID experience is ending. Inventory levels are coming up. Things are stabilizing, but still, banks are coming in and out of, we were talking about this the other day, that just getting them to buy a loan, getting the banks to want to take somebody with a 700 score. Normally that was just no problem. We'll send you right into full.
Yeah.
Now that's all changing, but at the same time, like, we've got to be thinking this way. Like, the people in those positions, really, I agree with you, man. We got to get in front of that, because I think the dealers that can change that experience and really differentiate themselves from their competition, those are the ones that'll win because after there would have been so many people in the last 3 years that wanted to buy a car and got confronted with a massive markup that wasn't explained properly to them, that left with a bad taste in their mouth, that are going to want dealers to pay the price for it now as they come back into the market. And how do you want to redefine how you go out in the market? And I think it starts on the website, and it probably starts with having a human connection, thanking people for coming to your digital showroom, and then introducing all the kind people that work in your store that are there to serve them. I think that's an amazing takeaway. So, is there anything you want to add, Matt?
I'll finish with this. We are in a massive transition point, both from a human level to an automotive level, right? The rise of AI is going to be exponential, right? Mm-hmm. We are moving from gas cars to electric, right? we as a country are a little bit of a laggard, right? But countries like Norway have sold more EVs than they do gas cars now, right? Every OEM we know is just pumping out EVs. So consumers are going to have to get on board because eventually they will have no choice, right? The gas cars are going to go away because that's what the EVs are, that's what the OEMs want, right? So cars are getting simpler, right? EVs have 40% of the parts that gas cars do. The interior is getting simpler. The website should get simpler. Everything has more technology. Our websites have looked the same for the last 2 decades. They have more widgets,
Yeah.
right? But that's about it, right? The format, the way they're laid out, they all look the same as they did then, right? The graphics are better, but it's the same. Everything is evolving to be cleaner and better technology and simpler. That's where we need to go. Like, stop overthinking everything that needs to happen. But the websites need like a global revamp at this point.
Yeah.
There's too many things that we're trying to accomplish.
Well, and it might even be, given how the OEMs now all have certified programs of one version or another, is even the same thing applies for them. How do you want to be different as an OEM? And that may be where the change comes from, is that maverick manufacturer that decides, you know what, I'm tired of looking like my competition and wants to take a completely different approach. That's where it's probably going to have to come from.
Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole separate conversation about co-op, right? And stuff like that, a very long, in-depth one. But the reality is now, historically, things move slow, right? Like, there wasn't a lot of new entrants into websites and search and all that type of stuff. It moved slow. So co-op and OEMs could handle those changes. We are about to see an onslaught of technology, right? There are website providers and search providers now that are using AI chatbots, right?
Right.
Are they co-op eligible? No. Right? But they're just going to keep coming. So, there has to be some type of, say, loosening of what is allowed and what's not allowed, and let dealers who want to be advanced.
Right.
Let them go forward, right? Just let them go forward instead of holding them back and trying to just push the bottom up. Let them go forward. The rest will come.
Yeah.
It's just that moment in time, right? Have to let them. They want to. They want to.
Yeah.
Right? What dealer doesn't want to be just, I have to use these 5 people. I can use whoever I want.
Right.
There's a way to do it, right? And that's a whole deep conversation. There's a way to do it to allow them to have more flexibility, and OEMs still maintain, the type of control that they want to have. But yeah, I think it should all be re-examined.
Yeah. Well, this will not be the last, man. We have to revisit this conversation. I really appreciate you joining me to have it. And I think you gave some great insights, and hopefully we get some great feedback from any of the operators that are listening to us. So, Matt Tedesco, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Definitely do it again.
Awesome.